Hello Reshifters, let me explain a bit the object copy paste from one scene to another relative to the textures. Now this is standard C4D mechanics and we have a few tools to help with this. So I have this scene called Proj1, okay, and I have another one called Proj2, or I will have another one in Proj2 in a different folder, okay. So first things first, I'm gonna drag a number squares texture here. It's called number squares, okay. And C4D of course will ask me, do you want this in absolute path or relative path? And if it's in relative path, I will copy this into a text folder here. So that's what's happening if I say yes, okay. Text folder, there you go. And you can see here the texture is in relative mode, and you can see that in two locations. You can see it in here, the file name, but this little nifty tool, it's really fantastic because it allows you to globalize, localize files, and so on and so forth. You can see here that the name of we have the name of the texture, suggested path, and the real path, okay. Now let's assume for a second this is missing. You're gonna have an X, red X here, so you have to repath. We're gonna look into that in a second. But you can see that this is localized. Now if you globalize the files, you'll see that the real path and the suggested path are matching. Okay, I'm gonna put this back to localize because, well, it's nice to have it next to the project. Now I have another texture that I want to use. For instance, I'm gonna get this one, okay, and for this one I'm gonna say no. And this one, because I said no, it's not copied in my Proj1 text folder. It's left wherever my library of texture is. Okay, and this annoys me because it's too big. I can use it and this will work. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a color mix, let's say. And I have input 1 and input 2. Get into the diffuse, put this at 0.5, so we're mixing between these two, and we get that. Now remember, we have this in relative and this in absolute. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna copy this object and I'm gonna switch, let's save the scene, save project, and I'm gonna switch to Proj2. There's no Proj2, so file, new Proj, save project as Proj2. I name it, yeah, sorry. Let's do a bit of house cleaning here and name this Proj2. Close this one and opening this one. So this is Proj2, okay, and I'm gonna paste the object. And of course, what I'm gonna end up with is the following. This, being in absolute mode, will retain all the textures and the path and everything is fine. The number squares doesn't exist in this because you have, see here, I have no text folder like I have in Proj1. And Proj2 doesn't have a text folder because, well, it's not needed. Okay, and of course, if I try to render this, I'm not gonna get the numbers texture. I'm only gonna get the absolute path textures. Okay, so what to do in this case? Of course, you can manually go and relink everything, which sucks a bit. You don't want to do that. You want to use the asset manager, and you can see here one of the texture is fine, this one, and the other one isn't. And if you're trying to localize this one, it can't because it doesn't exist in a text folder next to it. So what I can do for the one that's missing, I can relink files, okay, go to project, Proj1, and leave it search around there, and it finds it, and it puts this into absolute mode, okay, and this will work without any problems. So when you're copying, pasting objects with materials from one project to another, make sure that you either have your textures in absolute mode or the textures do exist in both paths if they're in relative modes. Otherwise, C4D and Redshift cannot just imagine where these are, right? Assuming you have search path for textures set up in your project, in your C4D. I don't have it. C4D will try to look into these texture paths, and this can be an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time, because if these uh, texture paths are actually on a network share and that's slow, it can slow the whole thing. Okay, so make sure you have things relative to the projects, and before copying pasting, um, if you're pasting an object that has the textures relative to a project and your new project doesn't have those paths, just use the asset manager because it's so flexible and so powerful. It's really, really nice, and it gives you an overview of all the missing assets in your project. And it's not just for simple texture, it's for dome lights, for proxies, and so on and so forth. Really, really nice. Hope this helps. Happy shooting. Cheers.